Please be seated. Good evening. I'm Councillor Shamila Sivaraja, and I would like to welcome you to this full council meeting. There are no scheduled fire drills tonight, so in the event of the fire alarm sounding, please leave the building via the main spiral staircase and through the main reception doors. Once outside, please turn left and make your way to the fire assembly point located beyond the multi-storey car park on Exchange Road. If you are unable to use the stair, please wait in the council chamber and you will be guided by a member of staff of the evacuation lift. This meeting is being live streamed via the council's YouTube channel. Please note that there is no comments function available as part of this webcasting. The council is the data controller and will retain the data collected during this webcast. This will be done so in accordance with the council's published data retention policy. Any members of the public seated in the public gallery should be aware that by entering the chamber, they are consenting to their images being captured by the automated camera system. Recording will be used for webcasting and/or training purpose. Councillors are reminded to take note of what is displayed on the screens in the room, as these show what is being recorded and webcast. Cameras are currently set to capture you in seated positions, so please remain seated when speaking. Councillors have received an electronic copy of the relevant paperwork for this meeting. The public agenda for this meeting is available on the council's website. We will now start the agenda. Are there any apologies for absence?
Yes. Councillors Bushnell, Jahans, Sue Mullins and Magali.
Councillors' interests notified in advance of the meeting are set out from page 5 in the supplementary agenda order paper. Are there any further interest councillors wish to declare? No. The minutes of the last two full council meetings held on 19th July 2023 and 19th September 2023 appear on pages 5 to 14 and pages 5 to 26 of the agenda respectively. Are both sets of minutes agreed? Agreed. Thank you. I will now provide you with the mayoral update. As the mayor, it was an honour to attend the Rotary Club investiture ceremony this past July. The event was a testament to the incredible dedication and community spirit that defines the Rotary Club. Attending the 100th birthday celebration at Deerswood Lodge Care Home was a truly heartwarming experience. It was an honour to join the residents, staff and families in celebrating such a remarkable milestone. I have recently visited Broadfield Stadium to meet with the chairman of FC Broadfield Stadium Football Club. During the visit, I have celebrated the club's fantastic innovations, particularly their walking football session for the elderly. These sessions not only promote physical activity, but also foster community spirit and combat social isolation among older residents. The Russell Martin Foundation hosted an unforgettable charity football match in August at Burgess Hill Town FC. The match was more than just a thrilling display of football. It was a day filled with community spirit, fun and fundraising. The proceeds support an incredible work of the Russell Martin Foundation, which focuses on empowering young people through sports and education. It's wonderful to attend and support my chosen charity. After a 9-year absence, Queen Square in Crawley was once again graced with the vibrant energy of the Mela performance. The last time this event took place was in 2015. This year, however, we were thrilled to host a complete and spectacular performance. As the mayor, it was an honour to open the event and witness the joy and pride of the community. It was especially heartwarming to see my students participate in this special occasion. The opening of Free Shop in Bewush, Crawley is a wonderful initiative aimed at providing essential items like food, toiletries, and baby supplies to those in need, all at no cost. Located inside the Beauty Centre in Dawson Square, the shop is easily accessible and welcomes everyone with a friendly smile. I had the privilege to attend numerous events, and there are many more that I haven't mentioned yet. I'm looking forward to the upcoming events in the future. On to the Cabinet members' announcement with the 10-minute time limit. As you can see on page 7 of the order paper, there are 4 announcements. I will take them in the published order, starting with the leader of the Council. Councillor Jones, please introduce your communication item.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm delighted to be able to begin tonight's meeting on such a positive note and announce tonight to councillors that Crawley has been allocated £3,854,000 from the government's Brownfield Land Release Fund. That's a £68 million fund, and that's awarded across 54 councils, and Crawley's allocation represents just over 5% of that of this round. It's a wonderful result, and it's thanks to the impressive bid that's been put together by our council officers, who I'm sure all members will join me in thanking for this sterling work. This funding award is going to meet the costs of preparing 3 brownfield sites for housing development. That's the Old Town Hall, Longley House and Deerswood garage site. And this fund will assist in the delivery of about 270 new homes across these 3 sites, where at least 150 of these, well over half, are destined to be affordable homes, and that proportion could be much higher by the end of the process. And I can also say that a very significant number of them will be council houses for our residents on our local waiting list. The allocation will directly benefit both the General Fund, the Town Hall and Deerswood, as well as the Housing Revenue Account, Longley House, in bringing forward these sites. The first milestone is to ensure that we're in contract for the demolition works by the end of March 2025, and we'll keep members informed on future progress. Thank you.
Finally, we have 2 announcements from Council. Next, we have Councillor Jasmine Khan, Cabinet Member for Public Protection, to speak on the Unity event.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Crawley Borough Council, in partnership with Sussex Police and local community leaders, will be holding a Unity event to celebrate the diversity of Crawley and thank people for how they came together during the social disorder and protest scene across the country in August to take a stand against racism and discrimination. The event will be held at the Town Hall from 7 p.m. on 14th of November. Key representatives from the community will be invited to the event, and the invites will be sent out via our community development team. There will be short speeches and performances by members and representatives from the community. This will be also an opportunity to give thanks for the way the recent events were managed, celebrate how the community came together and the diversity in Crawley. Once the main part of the event has finished, attendees will be asked to sign up a unity pledge to express solidarity and unity moving forward in coming together against any form of racism, discrimination and abuse. I would like to invite all the councillors to come and support the event, please. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Finally, we have 2 announcements from Councillor Irvine, Cabinet Member for Housing. Please introduce your communications.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The first announcement is by way, really, of a progress report. You remember that in March 2023, supported by the whole council, I believe, we began the process of changing flexible council tenancies into secure tenancies. We gave ourselves a target of 2 years. I'm pleased to say that so far, 81% of flexible tenancies have now been converted into secure tenancies, and I thank the housing officers for their hard work on this. Some of the remaining tenancies are in arrears, so they can't be converted, and officers will be working to get those arrears where possible cleared. Which leads me on to mention that your views on the draft tenancy strategy, which closed on Sunday, are welcome, and I urge you to submit your comments if you so wish. You should have had an email with the draft tenancy attached. In the same vein, our draft homelessness and rough sleeping strategy closes for comments also on Sunday. This is a very comprehensive document which details what we've done over the last 5 years and what we plan to do over the next 5. It's an exhaustive but not exhausting document to read, and even if you don't wish to comment, I urge you to read it. The document also details how we are trialling a new approach to street homelessness called Housing First. This means that around 5 suitable properties per year will be allocated as temporary tenancies, and those living in them will receive intensive help to get their lives back on track, with a view to eventually having their tenancy made permanent. News which leapt out at me today was that across the country last year, 155 rough sleepers died. And I think that's a terrible, terrible figure. And anything we can do to avoid this continuing is worth doing. Thank you.
Thank you. We will now move to item 5, public question time, which is set for 30 minutes. I will briefly explain the procedure. I will invite each person in turn to the table at the front of the public seating area to ask their question. Please state your name, which ward you live in, and then ask your question. Please remember that question cannot repeat any question that has already been asked tonight or within the last 6 months. I will then invite the most appropriate councillor to reply to your question. You may then ask one supplementary question which should relate to your original question or the response given to it. We will start by noting the submitted written public question as detailed in the supplementary agenda on page 9, which includes the response. Please put your hands up if you are wanting to ask a question. Okay. We'll now deal with agenda item 7, consideration of full council recommendation and call-in decisions. There are 7 recommendations under this item from the committees before the council this evening. The first 4 recommendations come from the Cabinet held on meeting on 24th July 2024. Recommendation 1, Financial Outturn 2023-2024, Quarter 4, starting on page 42. Councillor Jones, please introduce this recommendation.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This has all been through scrutiny in the Cabinet back in July when specific movements were thoroughly discussed. So unless anyone has any points on that, I'm going to limit myself to covering the points from the report that are subject to the recommendation tonight. Part A is about technical approval, as it's a function of full council to approve the reserve balances. And Part B refers to a funding allocation that was received too late to be included in the capital budget for 24-25. This is a technical requirement to gross up the budget and allow spending, even though it is wholly funded. So it is, I believe, a formality. And the £60,000 in Part C relates to an increase to the Three Bridges station budget funded from a SIL contribution. The total approved budget for Three Bridges station following the decision is 1.4 million. And the detail is shown on page 15 of the 24-25 Quarter 1 budget monitoring report under the Crawley Growth Programme. Thank you.
Councillor Navas, I believe you are seconding the recommendation.
Yes, I am. Thank you.
I will now open up the debate to the floor. Councillor Crowe.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The Conservative Group will be supporting recommendation 1. So we won't need to actually take a vote on it. I'm happy just to agree. But I do just want to draw members' attention to the report. I'm just trying to sort of see where I beg your pardon. It's not helpful not having a paper copy. Where yes, the second to last paragraph on page 42. I need to read it to remember, because this was back in July now, so it was quite a while ago. But I highlighted at the Cabinet meeting that a third of the projected overspend was not related to the homelessness issue and a temporary accommodation that we have in Crawley, and that actually in itself that is a big projected overspend, but in some ways it's dwarfed because of the larger problem that we do have with the costs of temporary accommodation. But what I would say is I don't think we should just sweep under the carpet significant overspends, because they are not part of the largest part of what that overspend actually is. Thank you.
Councillor Nawaz, I believe you want to. You might speak now. Or?
Just check if there's no other speakers.
Are there any other speakers? No.
Councillor Jones.
Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think there's always a danger in trying to rehearse discussions and debates from 3 months ago, particularly if points are made. I think that's a far harsh interpretation and probably quite unfair, really. I mean, the key variants remain temporary accommodation. There were some unexpected pressures. We had issues with the ratings of some of the council's buildings in terms of valuation, and I think also there's been some unusual decisions that were from the valuation office that go against what we said. Also, there's still the ongoing issues to do with the fact that we haven't handed over the land for the old town hall as we were meant to, and so there are costs there. So I think it's and I'd say that largely the third of the overspend that Councillor Crowe is referring to relates to that. There has not been any major overspending as a result of anything that the council's done wrong, as far as I can see. It's all been responsive in terms of dealing with unexpected pressures, of which, of course, temporary accommodation is the largest, but by no means the only one.
I call for a vote on recommendation 1, starting on page 42. Is that agreed? Agreed. We will consider recommendation 2, Treasury Management Outturn 2023-2024, starting on page 43. Councillor Jones, please introduce this recommendation.
Madam Mayor, again, this refers to our performance on our Treasury management strategy last year. And again, a lot of the discussion about this was back in July. I believe that the strategies have been incredibly sound, and credit needs to go to our officers for the work that they do on this. Last year, partly due to their more proactive management of our investments and cash flow, we received an additional 1.341 million interest on investments. Overall, the Council was in compliance with the approved Treasury management strategy. Members will see today, however, that the recommendation proposes to change the Council's authorised limit for external debt, which is internally set. Last year, we exceeded it for a short period, and this was as a result of a dip in short-term cash flow, which was met through short-term loans from other local authorities. Since the operational boundary is a management tool for in-year monitoring, it's not significant if the boundary is breached on occasions due to variations in cash flow, and so it's not counted as a compliance failure. And as a result, the operational boundary and authorised limit for 24-25 has been reviewed with the assistance of the Council's Treasury advisors, and we're putting forward a revised operational boundary and authorised limit detailed in the report for approval.
Thank you. Councillor Nawaz, I believe you are seconding the recommendation. Do you want to speak now?
Yes, I second the motion and reserve the right to speak later if need to. Thank you.
I will now open up the debate to the floor. No speakers. Councillor Nawaz. Thank you. There are no further speakers. Councillor Jones, please formally move the recommendation.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I formally move.
Is that agreed, or would you like a vote on it? Okay. We will consider recommendation 3, implementation of Procurement Act 2023, starting on page 45. Councillor Jones, please introduce this recommendation.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Formally proposing this recommendation. Essentially, I'm advised that members will need to support this as it's a change in legislation which we have no choice but to accept. A new Procurement Act's coming into force in February 25, and in order for us to comply with the new legislation, we've had to make some changes to our own procurement code at the Council, which is our contract standing orders. The Act has a focus on increased public sector transparency through the publication of more notices during a procurement process, more tendering opportunities for small and medium-sized businesses, and a focus on better contract management and more streamlined procurement processes. And I can confirm to members there have been no changes to the procurement code other than over and above those required for the statutory compliance.
Councillor Nawaz, I believe you are seconding the recommendation. Do you want to speak now?
Yes, I second the motion and reserve the right to speak later.
I will now open up the debate to the floor. Okay. There are no further speakers. Councillor Jones, please. Councillor Nawaz. Do you want to speak now?
Thank you. I think I'm happy to second the motion as is. Thank you.
There are no further speakers. Councillor Jones, please formally move the recommendation.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I formally move.
Is that agreed, or would you like a vote on it? Agreed. We will consider recommendation 4, temporary accommodation acquisitions program, Part B, starting on page 46. I'm aiming to hold the debate on this recommendation in open session, even though it relates to a Part B exempt report, unless I hear an objection to this approach. Okay. That being agreed, please remember to not talk about the locations or related finances. Councillor Jones, please introduce this recommendation.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is the first of 2 recommendations being brought forward to Council because of the sums involved to help us tackle the housing emergency. Now, this first one is to approve the uplift to the temporary accommodation acquisitions that the Council is looking to make for the purposes of securing additional temporary accommodation aimed primarily at reducing the financial burden of using expensive nightly paid accommodation and to enable the local authority housing fund allocation to be utilised that the Council's received. Without going into detail that might push us into Part B, Madam Mayor, for full transparency, the Council's looking at acquiring some substantial houses of multiple occupation from the market and is currently aiming to proceed with a modular housing scheme while also exploring the acquisition of self-contained new build housing from the market. An uplift in the available temporary acquisitions budget is required for these opportunities to be successfully progressed. I hope if I've missed anything, the Cabinet member will add to it when he seconds the recommendation. But given the significant financial pressures on this Council from temporary accommodation, anything we can do like this to help address it are important. So I hope Councillors will support the recommendation tonight.
Councillor Irwin, I believe you are seconding the recommendation. Do you want to speak now?
Yeah, yes, please. Thank you, Madam Mayor. I mean, I've not much to add to what Councillor Jones has said, actually. He's outlined the case, you know, very well, as you would expect. Just to add that, you know, temporary accommodation and homelessness has been a subject which has exercised this council a great deal over the last few years, and you know, I hope one day to see an end in sight to it, but that end isn't in sight at the moment. So in order to you know, try and reduce our costs and also to provide decent accommodation for homeless people, this is, you know, one step which we can take, and I hope the council will support it. Thank you.
Thank you. I will now open up the debate to the floor. Councillor Crowe.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The Conservative Group will be supporting recommendation 4. It's good to see some proactivity. This is definitely the right thing to do. We need to do whatever we can to address the issue of homelessness and the sheer demand on temporary accommodation, not only, of course, for the individuals involved, but for the financial impact it's having on this council and the risks to other services that poses. So we will be fully endorsing this. Thank you.
Thank you. There are no further speakers. Councillor Jones, please formally move the recommendation.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I formally move.
Is that agreed, or would you like a vote on it? Agreed. Thank you. We will consider recommendation 6, Tilgate Youth Centre redevelopment, approval of scheme budget. Oh, sorry. Did I skip the bit? I think I'm missing them from the top. Oh, my apologies. We will now deal with the final 3 recommendations, which all come from the Cabinet held on meeting on 2nd of October 2024. Councillor Jones, please introduce this recommendation 5, Crawley Borough Local Plan 2023 to 2040, starting on page 90.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have great pleasure in proposing the new version of the local plan to Council, which, if agreed, will protect this borough for the next 2 decades from unsuitable or even unscrupulous development, and will be the foundation of a sound and responsible plan for shaping Crawley Borough as a community with everything that people will need. And I'm proud with what we'll achieve with this local plan and for our communities by voting for this. Affordable housing, good quality housing. This is important because it goes beyond national policy standards. There will be no exception for developers. Every single housing development borough-wide outside of the town centre must provide a minimum of 40% affordable housing in some form, or provide a commuted sum to invest to bring this about elsewhere in the borough. This includes contributions from small sites, something often given an exemption in other areas. Our officers argued on our behalf that this comprehensive approach to affordable housing across all new housing sites should be retained, and the Inspectorate was convinced by our submission, recognising that we need this due to our housing shortage and the pressures brought about by the pressures of the housing emergency we have declared. The plan also requires affordable provision for care home developments, another thing that many areas do not have, but undoubtedly needed here in Crawley. Our plan will insist on higher housing standards. It will ensure there is a better mix, better quality internal space standards, higher than required by national standards. Apartments will need to be built suitable for families, not just individuals. Sustainable transport infrastructure will be key to our local plan, not just junction improvements, but there will be new planning obligations requiring developer contributions towards this and active travel for walking and cycling. There will be specific funding for employment and skills, support contributions from developers to help the Crawley workforce. A clear improvement and an innovative idea from this council, which again the government's independent planning inspectorate supported. When it comes to improving our community sustainability, we will be delivering high standards on sustainable construction. We'll be leading the way in water efficiency, delivering 85 litres per person per day, when the national requirement is 110 per person per day. The fact that the planning inspectors have agreed this approach is truly groundbreaking at a national level. Part of this is down to necessity. We need to do this, but it shows we are taking water neutrality very seriously. So seriously, in fact, that we are the first local authority in the country who will have a water neutrality strategy as adopted planning policy. We're also the first council to run a water consumption offsetting programme with Crawley homes. We are trailblazing that. We will be enabling biodiversity net gain. All developers will be required to do this now. Even sites with no ecology will have to provide more in their urban environment, going well beyond national policy. This will be more landscaping, trees, greenery. For some of us, this is entirely logical and in line with the existing garden city model that Crawley was based on. But we are taking it even further, and in my view, rightly so. We will continue to have robust policies to defend against unauthorised airport parking use of land. Our housing and noise thresholds policy has been strengthened to ensure those minimum standards are met, particularly as our communities grow bigger nearer Gatwick. The policies in our plan will help Gatwick Crawley argue and robustly defend its case in response to proposals for neighbourhoods being built on our boundaries by surrounding councils. Such policies are essential, as I'm sure we all know. Even if such development outside our boundaries should happen against our will, our new plan allows us to articulate Crawley's housing and infrastructure needs, giving us the chance to highlight adequate standards for such things as transport infrastructure, and will help avoid such developments completely ignoring this council's demands. Our plan also includes policy to safeguard our heritage, environmental and recreation assets. I feel Brooks Meadows is a protected site as a local green space, for example. The allocation of a major new strategic employment site at Gatwick Green will unlock 44 hectares of additional land, meeting our projected economic growth needs in full within the borough. This is quite a watershed. Our officers successfully arguing for this release of part of the safeguarded area east of the airport, with the inspector's final report supporting our arguments. But notwithstanding this, we do continue to safeguard substantial swathes of land between Mayoral and Gatwick Airport should proposals for a wide-spaced runway to the south of airport come forward in the future. Our plan has been praised by the inspectors on our commitment in the plan to the duty to cooperate. The refreshed and updated local plan leaves us in a much stronger position to defend our local decision-making on appeal. I'm not sure how much time I've got left, Madam Chair, because now I'm it's Tim Ludden sits in the way of it from here. Okay, Councillor Noaz will soon talk members through other aspects of the plan, but in this overview, I want to recognise the superb work that has gone into reaching the final stage of setting the plan by our planning officers at this council. They have been exceptional throughout this process. Thank you, Madam Chair, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Nawaz, I believe you're seconding the recommendation. Do you wish to speak now?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, I second this motion and I reserve the right to speak later.
I will now open up the debate to the floor. Councillor Lanza.
Well, thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm pleased to support this local plan. And I'm probably reiterate something of what Councillor Jones said. I think it was quite noticeable, the planning inspectorate's comments on our local plan, which themselves kind of broke a mould really, because it was observed that the safeguarded land, while understandable for a potential southern runway in the future, could nevertheless generate a harmful effect, a harmful planning effect. It's the first time I've seen that comment come from a planning inspector. And I do welcome the employment allocation of Gatwick Green. I think that that is a very good move as well. The report from the planning inspector also recognised that we have a tight urban boundary and that we cannot easily, well, we cannot on our own meet our full housing need. But it was also noted that we'd reached out to neighbouring local authorities. I think there was an expression about leaving no stone unturned in terms of trying to meet our housing need through cooperative engagement with other local authorities. I note what Councillor Jones has said, but if we look at the history of the development of Crawley, sometimes we do have bolt-on, what are sometimes called in planning terms, not very nice expression, bolt-on urban extensions, and which we seek to influence. We've got a couple on the east of town, east of the Balkan Road, what is now Crabbit Park, and also south of Forge Wood. Both used to be part of Mid-Sussex District Council. So clearly, where I do agree with him is if such a proposal were to be made, we would seek to exert the maximum possible influence on the content of that development, the way it's planned, the green space, the recreational space, the housing densities and the amount of social housing. So I think, given our constraints, it's a very good local plan. I like him, I do applaud the commitment on water neutrality and the stretch target, which the planning inspector supported, of a household consumption of 85 litres per day, which would be quite an achievement when that's actually delivered. I also think it right to pay tribute to the entire planning team for their great work on this. It's there's a lot of effort goes into preparing this, in getting the language right, using language that is even more diplomatic than we sometimes hear from elected members, you know, that kind of talent that planning officers have, and it's really important in the language of a local plan. So I do commend it to colleagues across the council. Thank you.
Councillor Pritchard.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As chair of the planning committee, this new local plan helps us to control what we allow to be developed within Crawley. It enables us to protect the character of our town while identifying suitable sites for our future housing and business needs. It's taken a huge amount of work by officers, and a lot of thought has been given to overcome difficulties, particularly in relation to water neutrality and finding housing sites within our boundary boroughs. As a result, the planning inspectors have agreed with our position against some opposition. As I will say again later in this meeting, we have an excellent team of staff within our council, and it is to their credit and to the credit of the leader and cabinet member for planning and economic development that we've had such a good outcome in this case. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Jaggard.
Thank you. Yeah, a lot of everything has been said. The local plan is just a huge amount of work, taking officers many years of careful consideration and balancing all sorts of different complex issues. It is very complex, and it is fantastic that it has been agreed by the Planning Inspectorate. I've served on the planning committee for 9 years now, so I'm well versed in many of these issues and constraints that we've had, particularly the water neutrality, which has really dampened what we have been able to do. But ultimately, the local plan gives us protection. It gives us protection against unwanted, undesirable development, possibly imposed upon us from afar, and it is vital, particularly at this time when developers are so keen to build on any land, be that brownfield or greenfield in many cases, that it's vital that we have some control over what is built in Crawley, and that is why I fully support the local plan. Thank you.
Councillor Lannan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just wanted to also quickly say thanks to all the officers for their excellent work on and guidance in making this plan passable by inspectors. As has already been said, the local plan shapes the future of this town, and it's vitally important that we have a passed local plan to defend against, effectively what could be pernicious developments. In other districts, including locally, local plans have indeed ultimately rendered changes of control of councils, split parties apart, and when not passed, allowed developers to just develop purely on their need for profit rather than considering the balanced needs of the community. So passing this is very good news and shouldn't go without celebration. I still feel, however, that whilst we've endeavoured and we've been shown to make our work with bordering councils, we've done it, we've left no stone unturned on developments on our boundaries. I still feel that we in Crawley are not allowed enough of a say on what is ultimately bolt-on developments to the borough boundary. I think ultimately, personally, the only real solution to this in the long term is a review of Crawley Borough Council's boundaries to enable Crawley to have the final say on what is currently, clearly additions to the town that we don't get a say on. And I'm just going to use examples: Kinwood Vale, west of Ifield even, and the new Crabbit Park, which are all, effectively extensions to our town without us getting the final say. I remember thinking at the start of this local plan round, which was quite a long time ago now, that this would be quite a simple process because we don't, particularly in the town, have very many contentious sites, which is usually what leads to a drawn-out plan process. But obviously, I hadn't been thinking, like many of us, about COVID, about changing government requirements, and indeed about water neutrality and the challenges that they would pose in getting it through this process. So again, thanks to the diligence of the officers and of course the input of the public and members of this council, we've navigated the process successfully and broadly without significant disagreement, have a passed local plan. I'm sure there are lots of neighbouring councils that would love to be in our position of having a local plan that's passed and defending our residents' towns against pernicious development and setting the plan for the future. So thank you and well done.
Thank you. Councillor Navas.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. If I may come to this one. I think a lot of positive things has been said about our local plan, and I personally would like to say I'm really pleased that our plan has been found by independent planning inspectors as legally compliant and sound, which is, as I mentioned by my colleagues as well, would have not been possible without the fantastic work undertaken by a strategic planning team. So well done to all planning team and the officers involved in this one. So this actually marks the successful end of Crawley's local plan examination, a significant period of plan making for the council, which has taken a considerable period of time since the local plan review started back in 2018. So it's clearly show how long it took. We had a lot of setbacks along the way, but we're finally here where it's been successfully assessed by independent inspectors. Our local plan has benefited not less than 5 times public consultation, and it's already been received positive endorsement by full council about 3 times, I think. So we have a couple of options here, I think, in front of us as council members. Adopt the local plan in its entirety, with all of the main modifications required by the inspectors. This would at long last confirm the new local plan as the council's new planning policy framework for the future developments in the borough. Or alternative is to not adopt the plan at all, meaning the council would immediately have to start all over again from the start and work on a new plan, because all authorities are required to prepare and maintain an up-to-date local plan. As Councillor Jones earlier said, without the new local plan, adopted decisions on planning applications would ultimately be taken away from local decision making. So Councillor Pichard may not be very happy with that. Obviously, all the council democratic decisions will go away. Applications and appeals would have to be considered solely against the national policies set out in the national policy framework, and particularly the presumption in favour of sustainable development. The absence of local plan being adopted would mean a significant risk of approval, therefore potentially very poor developments in the wrong places without any local ability to prevent them. This poor development would fail to reflect local needs. Without the local plan being adopted, it would not be possible to secure some of this essential Section 106 and community infrastructure levy financial contribution to invest in critical infrastructure as well as employment and skills. And one of them is already mentioned by Councillor Jones while he was talking about the Three Bridges scheme. And also a lot of things been mentioned, like voter neutrality, noise mitigation, safeguarding, and off-airport parking. It's very difficult to deal when locally with the national policy in place. And if the local plan being adopted by full council, then the council will be in a much stronger position to ensure new development meets a range of local requirements to benefit Crawley's local community and economy. All in all, I think it's really positive outcome from the examination, and this allow us to adopting the plan will safeguard the ability for the local planning authority to assess planning applications against local policies and priorities for years to come. I'm very hopeful that full council will respond positively and adopt the local plan for Crawley's great benefit. Thank you.
Thank you. There are no further speakers. Councillor Jones, please formally move the recommendation.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And thank you to all the members for the supportive comments. All right, richly deserved, I'd say, by our officers on this. And I certainly heard some of the comments and appreciate some of the frustrations, shall I say, with our interaction with other authorities. For example, Mid Sussex has recently been telling us that sadly they can't meet our unmet housing needs, and Horsham's stuck with water neutrality, so can't either. So I think we've actually created a lot of additional housing that will try and meet some of those in spite of that. But if I was a layperson, Madam Mayor, listening to all this, a resident of Crawley, I'd be wanting to know, what does this all mean for me? Well, Madam Mayor, if you will let me, I shall tell them. Crawley is a living, breathing, a vibrant community, and this plan underlies all of that. We want to keep it that way. It means this will mean more jobs in Crawley, addressing some of the problems caused by water neutrality, and that we can do more to provide the affordable homes that local people need. We can bring forward affordable housing despite the extremely challenging circumstances we've faced recently. It will allow us to maximise the amounts of social housing within the borough. And that is only right. That is what Crawley was built on. As a new town, we're proud of the quality of the living environment. This plan maintains those standards and will help to protect and increase our green spaces, putting ourselves in the strongest terms to oppose when we need to and to defend Crawley's position when we do so. The new planning obligations, as I said, we're going to unlock new employment and skills for local residents and new transport requirements to support expanding our public transport provisions. I think that's well worth voting for. I think it's something that will help us to fulfil the motto of this council, that we grow and we rejoice, and we can do that with a sound local plan that gives good town planning that makes the communities of the future. I urge all members to support it and give us the protection we need. Thank you.
Thank you. I will now move to a vote. Can I have a show of hands in favour? And against? Those abstaining? No. Oh, yeah, sorry, I didn't. It was 4, sorry.
Did you do 4?
Yeah.
Didn't see that.
So 4.
You're 4.
Yeah. I forgot myself. You've got 1 abstaining.
So if you just read the result.
Yeah. Okay. We've got 430 against, none, and abstaining 1. Recommendation is carried. We will consider recommendation 6. Tilgate Youth Centre redevelopment, approval of scheme budget and authority to appoint a contractor, Part B, starting on page 92. I'm aiming to hold the debate on this recommendation in open session, even though it relates to a Part B exempt report, unless I hear an objection to this approach. That being agreed, please remember to not talk about the finances or cost-related matters. Councillor Jones, please introduce this recommendation.
Sorry, Madam Mayor, I just missed what you said there. Don't mention what, sorry?
Financials and the details.
Yeah, the financials and what else was it? Sorry? Cost, beg your pardon. I'm so sorry, Madam. I was just keen to make sure I didn't say anything that I wasn't allowed to. So, and just in doing that, I formally move and will let the Cabinet Member for Housing introduce the merits of the scheme when he seconds the recommendation shortly. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Irvine, I believe you're seconding the recommendation.
I am.
Do you wish to speak now?
I would love to. Madam Mayor, thank you. Well, we've got the recommendation for you, before you. It's all spelled out there very clearly. And introducing this, I'd like to start off by saying that my consideration in cases like this is the knowledge that I personally am very adequately housed. And I believe that as a councillor, I have a duty, given that a roof over someone's head is probably one of the most important things in life. I have a duty to use what power I have to enable other people to be adequately housed. And that is why I will be supporting this. And the other thing is that, remember earlier this year, it seems a long time ago, but it was in fact this year, we declared a housing emergency. A couple of years ago, or probably more than 2 years ago, we declared a climate emergency. And although this is a small development of 6 flats, it goes a tiny way to fulfilling both of our objectives by increasing our supply of affordable housing. So, helping some people who aren't housed or need rehoused, and also by having it developed to a passive house standard, which means that there'll be practically zero carbon emissions, we're also going some way to fulfilling our carbon reduction targets. So that is, I don't know, I think it's all good. Now, I know that, that there will be some objections to this. They were raised at the Overview Scrutiny Commission, and I believe it was one of the issues was car parking, and one of the officers said that in actual fact this could be the reduction of 4 car parking spaces in Shackleton Road. But I don't propose to go into that in great detail tonight because, of course, this is subject to planning permission, and all those matters, car parking and so on and so forth, will be looked at by the planning officers and by the Highways Authority and who else. And, of course, the committee will have a chance to debate and vote on the merits of the planning application. Having said that, I do hope that the planning application gets to the planning committee sooner rather than later. But overall, I believe that this is a good scheme. I believe it fulfils their objectives. I believe it's good for Crawley, and I really do urge council to support it. Thank you.
Thank you. I will now open up the debate to the floor. Councillor Crowe.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I am supportive of the site being redeveloped, and clearly we do have derelict buildings on there. Now, I spoke at the Scrutiny Committee and at the Cabinet, so members of the Scrutiny Committee, members of the Cabinet know what I said there, and I'm not going to repeat some of that because they relate to matters that we can't discuss tonight. But those concerns were raised there, both by myself and Councillor Lanza in particular. At the Cabinet meeting, I did say I was a bit concerned that I didn't feel that the concerns that had been raised at OSC were adequately then highlighted by the chair of the Scrutiny Committee at the Cabinet meeting itself. Now, I like to think that the Conservative Group is a constructive opposition, and you'll see that we are supporting pretty much most recommendations this evening, but we're not going to support this one. And the reason being is that we don't think the council have got this quite right. Like I say, I'm not opposed to having development on the site, but I attended the consultation event. I think it was, I can't remember if it was 1 or 2 years ago. It was quite some time ago, and I think there was 2 events, but I attended one of the consultation events, and it was very clear to me at that event that there was resident concern about car parking in the immediate area. Now, I am familiar with Shackleton Road and the area around there. I represent it on the county council, not this council, but as a county councillor, car parking is an issue that comes up quite frequently. The consultation findings were not presented at the Scrutiny Committee, and thankfully I was able to get a hold of a copy of the consultation report, and it's quite stark that 230 Tilgate residents replied to it, and over 3/4 were opposed to this scheme in its current guise. And the overriding concern that they had is that the problems with on-street parking that exist in that area now risk being made worse by a development that will take away 3 or 4 on-street car parking places due to the fact that the development needs to go in off the road, and also potentially, even though the scheme will be within the council's parking standards, history tells us, and you only look at some developments like Pembroke Park that end up having overflow parking elsewhere, that sometimes those parking standards do not reflect the reality of the numbers of vehicles that people own, and therefore the extra on-street parking demand that pressure creates. So, as I say, not opposed to development of this site. We do need affordable housing, but just because there is a need for affordable housing doesn't mean that we should have it at any price or at any cost. And I mean that in terms of not just financial matters, which I can't talk about, which I did talk about at Scrutiny and Cabinet, but to do with the concerns of residents of the area, especially with car parking. So we won't be supporting this recommendation. Thank you.
Answer.
Madam Mayor. Really two areas and reasons for opposing it. One is the level of public opposition and past precedent, because there's been other proposed developments in Tilgate on rather larger areas of land, which would enable a more flexible delivery of affordable housing, but which were rejected by this council, by its new cabinet, I think, about 10 years ago. Now, this development site, we're talking about 6 units. That's all it is. And it's a site where you've got less scope for a creative development simply because it's a small space. You've also got added complications because there's a need to demolish something and build something afresh rather than use a piece of land which is currently undeveloped. So without going into the detail of the financials, it's my view that the money that we would be spending on this, and this recommendation is about approving the budget, not approving the development. The money as another member said, planning committee makes a decision on the development. So essentially we're opposing this budget allocation because our money could go further. It really could, and deliver more. We could deliver more elsewhere for the same funds, more affordable housing than we're proposing here. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hilton.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It was a very interesting discussion at OSC, and obviously I don't replicate that, but I actually had a look at the site today myself, and yes, in all parts of Crawley there are parking problems, but I'm not a local resident, I'm not a local ward councillor, but I didn't think, compared to other places, it was that bad. And I also looked at the site. What's on it at the moment? An old boat, a derelict building, but a lot of space. And I know from previous consultations, we haven't always gone for the best site. And in terms of parking, there's going to be 4 sites in situ, and I think also there's 6 one-bed flats. There's not going to be loads of people, loads of cars there. And I think, looking at the footprint of the site, I think it's ideal for this kind of development. And I'm the same. I don't want to talk about the cost of finance, but I want to talk about the value. And the value is social housing in this town. We've got a housing emergency. We've identified a need, and I think we should just get on with it and look at it, because it's 2 years since the consultation, and as a new elected councillor, I want us to get on with it and build those houses for people in need.
Thank you. Councillor Jaggard.
Thank you. I haven't prepared anything for this because I wasn't going to speak on it, but obviously, we do need the places for people to live, and as my colleague said, this is to agree the allocation of the money to build these dwellings, and that is the problem, is that they're not the right dwelling. Now, Councillor Irvine and I went to Bromley several years ago, 2017 now, to look at modular housing, and the modular housing had parking spaces underneath the building, and that to me would seem to be a solution because they were extremely energy efficient. They harvested the water from the roof, and Councillor Irvine and I were very, very impressed with those, but none of them have come forward yet at this council, which is surprising because we were so enthusiastic. And it seems to me that this is an ideal site. It's a brownfield site, underneath parking, with the flats above it, would actually fit in there quite well. And the modular housing is extremely quick to build. It is extremely economical, cost-wise as well, compared to passive housing, which does tend to be a little bit more expensive, and that's not saying anything about the budget, but it just seems to me that there are other solutions, there are better solutions that would be able to provide really efficient, warm houses, flats for people to live in that would go up within months. And that's it really, and solve the parking problems at the same time. Thank you.
There are no further speakers. Councillor Jones, please formally move the recommendation.
Thank you for everyone's contribution, Madam Mayor. Madam Mayor, did I understand Councillor Lanza was saying we should build on the field in Ely Close instead? Has he told them? I'm happy for him to clarify if that's not the case. But I've listened to the contributions from the Conservative group, and I have to confess to be a little puzzled by the sometimes spurious reasoning behind some of the objections that are being made tonight. There's been great play made of the unit price for this housing and at previous meetings, and one of this council's most important duties to the public is to enhance and maintain the public realm. And all of these comments seem to disregard the costs of demolition. Now, this was needed quite desperately, as anyone who knows this part of Tilgate will agree. The old Silver Birch Centre, as I know it, is an eyesore.
Sorry. Just reminding.
I'm not going to mention any figures, don't worry. Okay. You know, it's well past the end of its useful life, and it's clearly showing all the signs of it. And it's worth adding that the budget contains a healthy contingency in light of conditions within the construction sector. We'd rather start with a higher budget and spend less than the other way round. Nonetheless, within the context of the HRA, officers have determined that this still offers value for money. It wouldn't have gone ahead if it didn't. Then there were the arguments against it about the parking. Now, as Councillor Crowe knows when he raised this at Cabinet, I conceded Tilgate as a neighbourhood undoubtedly has problems with parking. But Shackleton Road is probably the worst place in the neighbourhood to be arguing this. There is literally no housing on most of one side of the road, and there's a car park. Now, I noticed that he hasn't repeated his argument at Cabinet that perhaps the flats could be built for older people. Yet, when we look at the numbers of people on the council's waiting list or stuck in temporary accommodation, this isn't the age group most in need of council housing. So, I mean, I could only question why that was singled out, because in my experience these days, there's not much less chance of a pensioner not having a car than anyone else. But, you know, if I didn't know any better, Madam Mayor, I'd think the Conservatives just didn't want any council housing at this location. But there is a serious point to this recommendation. This is an important scheme for the council. It's on a brownfield site. It's a smaller site. And as we use our remaining larger sites and we protect the important green spaces we have, like at Ely Close, this is the type of development that we will be left with. So I agree with the Cabinet member. I think this is a proportionate and encouraging proposal using Passive House, which will be good for the tenants' energy bills and also for the environment. I'm sorry to hear that the Conservatives won't be supporting this recommendation tonight, but I urge them to reconsider, and I certainly urge all councillors to support this. Thank you.
Thank you. We will now move to the vote. Can I have a show of hands in favour? And against? Those abstaining? Yeah. 21 for, 10 against, and none abstaining. And with this motion is carried. We will consider the final recommendation, Recommendation 7, Housing Acquisition and Future Delivery, Part B, starting on page 94. I'm aiming to hold the debate on this recommendation in open session, even though it relates to a Part B exempt report, unless I hear an objection to this approach. That being agreed, please remember to not talk about the locations or related finances. Councillor Jones, please introduce this recommendation.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is the second part of the Council's proposals today relating to increasing our own housing provision. Again, I think this is an extremely good recommendation where we continue to act on our plan to do our pledge indeed, to do all we can to locally address the housing emergency, to increase our council housing and create more temporary housing stock, including making more accommodation for larger families. Now, for the accommodation for larger families, the supply here in Crawley has become increasingly scarce under the pressure of demand. And sadly, this is one where more often the council has been regrettably forced to send households out of borough with all the disruption that entails for the families involved, because there is nothing locally available at the time they need it. At last, with this round of the Local Authority Housing Fund, may I say, Madam Mayor, the government have finally given us something worth bidding for, because I can remember in previous years, under the previous government, earlier rounds of this fund would have been punitively expensive for the councils to have made an application. So I'm glad to see wiser heads have prevailed with this approach. And also, this round, it appears to recognise the demands for temporary accommodation much more than has previously been the case. This also, the arrangements we have, Madam Mayor, also require council money to contribute towards the overall costs in conjunction with the government grant we've received. Now, I promise I will avoid mentioning figures, so avoid us going into Part B business, but it is enough that we need to come to full council to get permission to do it. Members will have seen the figures, and I hope that they agree with my conclusion that they are reasonable and will support this tonight. It is all money that will help us. It's all money that will help us to acquire the existing developments that will get a roof over the heads of some of our local families who need it the most. And I praise the work of the Cabinet member and our housing officers in reaching this point. There's, it might be in Part B, but there's been some incredibly impressive work, and the housing that we get will do some real good for a lot of people. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Irwin, I believe you are seconding the recommendation. Do you wish to speak now? Okay.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just want to say, by way of seconding this, that for all the reasons which Councillor Jones has outlined, this is a sensible proposal from a sensible council, and I'll leave it there.
Thank you. Councillor Crow.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Okay, but certainly I am going to speak on this. We will be supporting this recommendation. We just heard a very, on the previous item, a very disingenuous comment from the leader, saying that if he didn't know better, that the Conservatives did not want social housing on that site. And yet we're going to support this recommendation that will enable more social and affordable housing in this town. And he mentioned how it was better under this government. Well, actually, the reality is this council's been slow to the table to apply for this fund. Other councils across the county have been able to draw and access money from this fund previously, and I had previously inquired as to why Crawley Borough had not. So I'm glad that we have now, finally. It is the right thing to do, and we will be supporting it. Thank you.
Councillor Jones, please formally move the recommendation.
Well, thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm so pleased with the power of persuasion we've been able to get your support, Councillor Crowe. But I will have to agree to disagree on the description of me as disingenuous. But I would reject any accusations that this council's been slow to the table. Far from it. And I think also the record of success in bidding for some of the government grants we've actually received in now and in the past shows that we put a great deal of thought into this at both the political and an officer level. But let's just concentrate on the positive thing, which is when we agree this, we'll actually be able to move forward with some excellent work and have the resources to do so. Thank you.
Thank you. Is it agreed, or would you like a vote on it? Agreed. Thank you. We will now deal with the first notice of motion before us this evening, which is set out on page 97 of the agenda. Notice of motion 1, changes to the winter fuel allowance and protecting pensioners from fuel poverty. This motion will be moved by Councillor Crowe and seconded by Councillor Burgess. As detailed on the order paper on page 17, Councillor Crowe is going to move an amendment on his own notice of motion. I therefore call upon Councillor Crowe to formally move and present you notice of motion and amendment.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. I formally move my motion and my own amendment to it. And of course, I accept my own amendment. So therefore, the amended motion now becomes the substantive motion. Many people were rightly shocked when pretty much the first announcement made by the Labour government on coming into office was to scrap the winter fuel allowance for 10.2 million pensioners, which includes 13,000 pensioners here in Crawley, basically all pensioners that are not in receipt of pension credit. Now, I don't have an issue with considering restricting the winter fuel allowance to the very wealthiest pensioners, but the Conservative group have a big issue with pensioners who are not well off suddenly having £300 taken away from them by the Labour government at the very same time that energy bills have risen by 10% from the 1st of October. The charity Age UK have said that nationally there'll be 2 million pensioners who badly need this money to stay warm this winter. And if we extrapolate a proportionate Crawley number from that 2 million number, we'd be looking at over 2,500 pensioners here in Crawley who badly need that money to stay warm this winter. And that is because the cut-off is set at too low a level. And that's why this appalling decision needs to be urgently reviewed by the government. And let's not forget, the Labour government didn't even do an impact assessment. They just announced it and then they shamefully tried to blame it on the previous Conservative government when everybody knows that the Labour government have created their own black hole in the public finances by giving inflation-busting pay rises to the trade union paymasters. This really is the most deceitful and shameful of political operating. I'm looking at one of our members who's done pretty well out of one of those pay rises as well. But it's not just the Labour government that have behaved in such a shoddy way. Crawley's very own Labour Member of Parliament, former council leader Peter Lamb, became nationally infamous over this, putting Crawley on the map, but for all the wrong reasons. In September last year, he posted on his Facebook page a link to a petition claiming that Rishi Sunak was considering removing the winter fuel allowance and encouraging people to join him in signing it because, and I quote, it was a crucial lifeline for pensioners. And his very first test as an MP for Crawley was a vote in the House of Commons on the winter fuel allowance, and he completely failed that test. And when defending how he voted, he said that pensioners that don't switch on their heating this winter following the loss of the winter fuel allowance, and I quote, then that's their choice. That is absolutely shameful. He did apologise, but he was forced to. Now, let me make this very clear, and it also relates to the written question that we've got submitted this evening by Mr Robin Burnham. I oppose how Peter Lamb MP voted in Parliament on the winter fuel allowance, and every member of this Conservative group opposes how he voted in Parliament. So I challenge every Labour member here who speaks now on this motion to say whether or not you support how Peter Lamb voted in Parliament. Let's see how many are prepared to say one way or the other. Our motion seeks to get the Council as a whole to call upon the government to urgently review the decision to remove the winter fuel allowance and to get them to take ownership and responsibility for their decision, whatever they decide to do in the end, which they have not done so far. I'll briefly explain why I've amended my own motion, that removing the actions to encourage the take-up of pension credit. That's because we've got a motion following this one from the Labour group that's about increasing uptake of pension credit, and amending my own motion was the only way to be sure that my motion will be debated separately. And just for the record, I support all efforts to ensure that eligible pensioners can claim pension credit. But back to the winter fuel allowance, across the entire country, local authorities are standing up for their pensioners and putting their names to motions like this. I really hope that Crawley Borough Council will also put our pensioners first and vote for our motion. And I say to Labour councillors opposite, and I know that some of you do feel uncomfortable about what your government has done. So I say to you, do the right thing. Put your constituents first before your political party. Support Crawley's pensioners and vote for our motion. Thank you, Madam Mayor, and I formally request a recorded vote when we come to the voting. Thank you.
Councillor Burgess, please second the motion and amendment. Also, please confirm if you are wishing to speak now or reserve your right to speak later during the debate.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I formally second both the motion, motion and the amendment. And I'll start by agreeing with my colleague and leader of the group. He has some very strong words to say, and I actually support what he says. There is a concern, and as I repeat, particularly by the charities such as Age UK. They are concerned about health risks posed by such a quick decision, which appears to have come into place without an impact assessment, which we just heard. And I also agree and believe that many people who claim the state pension are seriously at risk. I'm sure we all know someone in this category: grandparent, an aged aunt, uncle, elderly person, a constituent along your road. I remind you that not everyone actually receives a full state pension. I don't myself. That is for the history books to look into, because it's all to do with the husband's allowance many years ago, but we won't go into that. So it's good to know that we are thinking of how we can move this forward, and we will be looking at that later. Let's not blame one another let's not blame one another or for a reason such that this decision has been made. Let's join forces and help those who need this allowance. Remember, those who are just above getting the heating allowance might still be struggling. Yes, they do have a choice. They can heat or eat, and they go to food bank, I suppose, they can get out. But it's important to recognise that such people also have to maintain the homes in which they live. Can't do everything, and they need that helping hand. So again, I call upon you to join forces. Let's stop arguing about it. After all, I constantly remind everyone that we're here to help people of all ages, whether or not they voted for us or whether or not they voted at all. So please support your constituents and please support this motion. Please encourage the heating allowance to go forward. And on a personal note, I'd like to see it increased. Thank you.
Thank you. I will now open up the debate to the floor. Councillor Lanza.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Like my colleagues, I very much oppose what Peter Lamb MP did in Parliament in terms of not voting the right way on the winter fuel allowance in support of his constituents, and also his remarks that he put on Twitter, although I acknowledge he tabled an apology. But in the context of public feeling about the winter fuel allowance, I want to refer to the Labour Party conference, which was held quite recently, and where there was several kind of arms to the Labour Party conference: the trade union movement, the constituency Labour parties, the MPs, and the affiliated societies. And it was the unions, and I think they tried it at the TUC conference but couldn't get it on the agenda, but they tried and succeeded in carrying essentially a notice of motion asking for the government not to proceed with the changes to the winter fuel allowance. So that's Labour Party members have done that. So if you vote for our notice of motion this evening, you'll be in particularly good company, because the mass of your membership have already done it. And I imagine that some of you opposite me actually went to that conference, and a proportion of you, and it might have been by secret ballot, might even have voted to say, no, we don't want these changes to the winter fuel allowance. So what's the harm in doing the same thing here? Because if you don't, and I can see it on your faces, if the camera could point the other way simultaneously, they'd see how isolated you feel amongst yourselves, because your own party conference, with all of its wings, has voted against the government. So you ought to as well. You're going to be incredibly isolated. The only support they're going to have in the country is local authority, council, Labour groups. That's not much of a base, is it? It's about a few thousand people. So in politics, sometimes it's not just what happens, but how it looks. And this is how it looks with what the government has done. It looks like they've kind of caved in on above inflation pay settlements. And for people who have gone on strike, the powerful people, if you like, relatively powerful people, and then penalise the vulnerable, i.e. the pensioners, who for the most part, not exclusively so, cannot go on strike to defend their own interests. And that's what feels so bad. And it's worse than that, because commentary from your senior cabinet figures is along the lines of, well, if a strike is giving us a really hard time, we're going to cave in, we're going to fold, and we're going to meet the demand. And that generates more demand throughout the public sector, because if you declare your hand before you enter in a negotiation, that's a really unwise thing to do. So what we know you can sometimes tell from the actions of a government, and particularly its cabinet, attributes of the people who are members of that cabinet. And we know that members of the Labour government's cabinet are really awful poker players, don't we? We must know that, because they've declared their position to the public sector in advance of negotiations. We also know the Labour cabinet contains quite a few Swifties, but I digress. You know, and it's lamentable that with all that talent, that they didn't conduct an impact assessment. Oh, get with the programme, please. Swifties are followers of Taylor Swift. Come on, you know. But the thing is that with all that breadth of talent, they didn't have enough wherewithal to conduct an impact assessment on this measure at all, and they've just gone ahead with it. What they've done instead with their approach to public sector pay settlement is declared an open season on the public sector finances, and now pensions fear because they weren't mentioned much in the election campaign. Working people were, and that's absolutely right, but pensioners through omission must now be fearing what's happening next on the 30th of October. You can help remedy that. Do what your party conference did and support us. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I mean, I've held back from responding on this for a time to give a chance for some of the Conservative group to speak on their motion, and I think they've already demonstrated that this is just a thinly veiled attack on the Labour government and our local Labour MP for party political advantage. You know, if Councillor Crowe and his colleagues think we're going to give that any credibility by engaging with it any more than is necessary, they're wrong. I don't believe there is anyone in the government who likes the winter fuel allowance decision, but there's a £22 billion black hole. Boris spaffed the money up the wall. Liz Truss crashed the economy, and whatever money was left, Rishi Sunak finished plenty off of it in jet fuel. You know, I have to say to the Conservative group, there are heart-rending decisions in the short term because your party and government broke this country. But the decision has been taken on this. We in the Labour group want to concentrate on what we can do on a local level to help people who are worst affected. That's why we want to make sure everyone local who hasn't claimed pension credits, who is eligible, claims it, and we take all practical steps to achieve it. If I thought the Conservatives here were genuine about this too, I may have been a little bit more receptive to this, but they're not. Already tonight, the leaders and the oppositionist group have taken out all the mentions of any practical actions or help with the pension credit out of their own motion, the one constructive bit, so they can double down on their attacks on the government. Well, actually, on this side, we're serious about doing something to help people, and that's why we're concentrating on doing what we can locally on the pension credit uptake. Now, we also realise, like with any means-tested benefit, there are people who narrowly miss out. And that is why we want to use the renewed household support fund given to local councils like West Sussex County Council and Crawley Borough Council to help precisely those people who may need it most. This was on the verge, the household support fund, I should add, of being scrapped by the previous Tory government. Now, Rachel Reeves, the Chancellor, has got a lot of stick over this, but in a situation where money is scarce, if there was a choice to be made, choosing to preserve the pension's triple lock was almost certainly the better thing to do because it guarantees the best uplift every year for everyone's basic state pension. Might not be popular to say, but it almost certainly cost a lot more to keep than the winter fuel allowance. But one of the problems, I'd say to members here, however, is that the triple lock is a lot less easy to understand. We all understand the winter fuel allowance, but in 2022, the Conservative government disapplied the triple lock for a year. Were people up in arms? No. They probably should have been, but it wasn't clear what had happened and it was difficult to communicate it. So, you know, I say to the Conservative group, play to the gallery all you want tonight. It's pretty obvious what's happening to everyone who's watching. And then we'll get to a motion later that we can support and will do some good for our residents. And frankly, Madam Mayor, I hope they'll let us do it sooner rather than later.
Thank you. Councillor Jaggard.
Thank you. A damning report published back in 2017 when Keir Starmer was in the Shadow Cabinet claimed that restricting the winter fuel allowance to pensioners on benefits would cost thousands of lives. The Resolution Foundation think tank was commissioned by Labour back in 2017, and it claimed that 3,850 pensioners' lives would be at risk through being unable to heat their homes. At the time, the Shadow Chancellor, John MacDonald, said that at the time that removing the winter fuel payments for millions of pensioners would leave thousands of the most vulnerable at risk this winter, adding that pensioners would struggle to heat their homes if the allowance was scrapped for those above the pension credit threshold. I do not support our MP when he voted to support the scrapping of the winter fuel allowance for these pensioners. It is a disgrace when politicians on over £90,000 a year think that it's okay to take £300 off from our most elderly residents, those above 80, and those who are just above the pension credit cut-off. Many on no more than 13,000 income, and that represents a 2.5% cut in their spending money. A cut when public sector employees are asking for and receiving huge double-figure pay increases. This motion asks for the decision to be reviewed and its impact to be properly scrutinised and assessed. We took out the bit about promoting pension credits because that was in your motion. It doesn't mean to say that we don't want people to get pension credits. Of course we do. And that is very important. But it's the right thing to ask for this decision to be reviewed. It's the right thing to ask for its impact to be properly scrutinised and assessed. That is the right thing to do with this motion. It's to support the motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Lunnan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I want to start by stating my agreement with large sections of this proposed notice of motion. I think it is unfortunate that large numbers of pensioners will probably be put into difficult positions, and I'm sure the vast majority of members would probably rather the decision to means test this hadn't had to have been made. As well as with all the suffering highlighted already, it hits at the principle of universalism on benefits. And the first and most important response to this issue is to make sure that those who should be receiving the winter fuel allowance still do. We know that many people that claim pension credit, indeed other support, don't, whether they're unaware or choose not to. However, there is a following motion, a very good following motion, I must say, that details everything this council has been doing to support those people and will go on to do to support those people, so I won't go into further detail here. But this motion is rather dance around the elephant in the room, if you will, that is the underlying reason for this cut being made. This cut was not a part of the Labour Party manifesto. It wasn't a desire of the Labour Party going into this election. But when the Labour Party got into government and looked at the books, there was a 22 billion black hole confirmed by the Civil Service. And once this has been discovered, and due to the promises being made to the public during the election, this left the government with rather limited options. And maybe we wouldn't have made those promises if the previous government had actually been honest about the state of the public finances. We've seen before under Liz Truss what happens when you don't have a balanced budget. If you try to spend or cut taxes without making clear where the money is going to come from, then the financial markets react in such a way on the bond market to make further government borrowing financially prohibitive. So the books need to be balanced. And if you're going to oppose certain cuts, I believe we need to make clear what cuts or tax rises we would make instead. Otherwise, we're just back into the fantasy land of Liz Truss's magical money tree. Now, whilst there are millions of pensioners who do need the winter fuel allowance, there are also plenty of pensioners, and my own parents would be a perfect example, who don't need the money. So I think most people can agree to some element of means testing this that is required. And indeed, even without the winter fuel allowance, as Councillor Jones already highlighted, pensioners will still be better off next year under a Labour government than they were the year before, due to the triple lock. Now, personally, I may wish the boundary had been set slightly higher, but I also don't have full access to the books, and I'm sure it's been carefully considered why it's been set at the limit it has been. So, while it is unfortunate that the winter fuel allowance has been cut, this motion is not a constructive way for us to engage on the issue with the government, and so I won't be supporting it.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Firstly, I declare a personal interest in that I'm an ASLEF member and a train driver. I suspect the digs by the Leader of the Opposition were targeted at me. It should be noted that since 2020, even after this pay deal, all of the unions involved in pay deals since the Labour government took over have still had a real terms pay cut. So although your friendly press like to say inflation busting, it is not. We've had a real terms pay cut, and so have all the other unionised groups that have received pay offers. Pensioners haven't. Due to the triple lock, they have not had a real terms pay cut. They've had a real terms pay increase in the same period of time. This is just the opposition here playing party political, which does nothing. Contrast this with what our party have done for people in Crawley. Our notice of motion sets out what we can do to help people in Crawley. It's not unusual for the Labour Party in Crawley to help people. We've got the Labour Women's Group have held 2 food bank collections every week for the last 2 years. We're out there helping people. You're out there poking at us rather than doing stuff yourselves. Thank you.
That's fine. As there's no other speakers, Councillor Crow, do you wish to speak?
To sum up, so I will use that opportunity. I thank Councillor Burgess, Councillor Lanza and Councillor Jaggard for their supported comments. Turning to the other comments that have been raised, well, I don't thank Councillor Jones for his comments at all, quite honestly. I was quite insulted when he said that he didn't think I or the Conservative Group were being genuine when we put forward this motion. We absolutely are. And let's just think about if the boot was on the other foot. Just imagine if a Conservative government had taken away the winter fuel allowance from pensioners. Does anybody here for one moment think that Councillor Jones would not be chomping at the bit and would have brought a motion to this council criticising the Tory government? Of course he would. We know that for a fact. He knows it, I know it, everybody in this room knows it. So let's get away from this nonsense about us not being genuine. We are genuine because people, quite rightly, are outraged by what the government have done. And we've heard again about the so-called black hole. And I wasn't intending to out Councillor Pritchard. He outed himself and what he does for a living and his pay. That is his business, quite frankly. But my understanding is that let's take people out of this. That the train drivers received a £9,000 pay rise, albeit I think it's over 2 or 3 years. Well, I'm old enough to remember when I worked full time at Gatwick when my annual salary was less than £9,000 a year. 9,000 is a lot of money. Now, turning to other comments that have been made. Councillor Jones mentioned the Household Support Fund. Well, the last round of that was happened under the Conservative government, and this Labour government has extended it further for a further round, although a little bit late with the guidance sending out after the 1st of October. But hey-ho. But the Household Support Fund already gives energy support for people that have had trouble with their energy bills. And there's no new money in the household support. It's not gone up. It's the same level as it was previously, which was the same as the time before. But energy bills have gone up by 10% as of the 1st of October. So I suspect there will be greater demand for energy bills with the Household Support Fund. Now, Councillor Lullin did make some reasonable comments, and he mentioned Liz Truss, and yeah, I didn't support Liz Truss' premiership or her budget. I thought she was a disaster, quite frankly. But we might just be starting to repeat that again on the 30th of this month. It's being reported in the media that Rachel Reeves is planning to just at the stroke of a pen completely change the rules and borrow. And let's see what the bond markets and how they react to that if that does indeed happen. I'll certainly be the first one to remind Councillor London at the next council meeting if that hopefully it doesn't happen, but if it does, I will make sure that I remind him of that. And we've also heard, I think it was Councillor Pritchard talked about the pension raises that have been. And former Councillor Peter Lamb, now the MP, actually tried to claim that this year's £900 pension increase was down to the Labour government. No, it wasn't. It was down to the previous Conservative government as part of the triple lock. So next year it's going to be about £450. So it's going to be half as much because the average wages and inflation, whichever measure you use, is less going forward. But as I've repeated, the price of energy is going up by 10%. So I really hope that members opposite can find it within themselves to do what they know is the right thing. They know it. They know it. The Labour Party conference knows it. The TUC knows it. It seems to be the only people who don't know it are Labour MPs when they vote in Parliament and Labour council groups. Do the right thing. Support our motion. Thank you.
Thank you. I call for a vote on substantive as amended notice of motion 1, changes to the winter fuel allowance and protecting pensioners from fuel poverty. Can I have a show of hands in favour? Oh, sorry. Okay. Yep. As a recorded vote has been requested, I'm going to invite the Democracy and Data Manager to conduct the voting process on my behalf.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just for clarification purposes, the recorded vote is on the amended substantive notice of motion, changes to the winter fuel allowance and protecting pensioners from fuel poverty, as set out in the order paper on pages 19 and 20. Councillor Adderley. There won't be microphones turned on, you just have to shout for this. Councillor Adderley. Councillor Ashraf. Councillor Ayling. Councillor Barrett. Councillor Belbin. Councillor Bidwell. Councillor Burgess. Councillor Burke. Sorry. Councillor Cheriton. Councillor Crowe. Councillor Hart. Councillor Hellier. Councillor Hilton. Councillor Irvine. Councillor Jaggard. Councillor Jones. Councillor Imitar Khan. Councillor Kieran Khan. Councillor Yasmin Khan. Councillor Lanza. Councillor Lunnan. Councillor Chris Mullins. Councillor Nawaz. Councillor Noyce. Councillor Patel. Councillor Pritchard. Councillor Ramsey. Councillor Rana. Councillor Russell. Councillor Sivaraja. Councillor Yanni.
Right. 10 for, 21 against, and none abstaining. And with this, motion falls. We will now deal with the second notice of motion as set out on page 99 of the agenda. Notice of motion 1, promotion of pension credits. This motion will be moved by Councillor Jones and seconded by Councillor Chris Mullins. I therefore call upon Councillor Jones to formally move the motion and present the motion. Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As I said earlier, instead of engaging with the party political knockabout rhetoric, with this motion we're just going to concentrate on what we can do locally to help those in the most need who may be struggling with their fuel bills. Now, given the concerns being expressed about the winter fuel allowance restrictions, I was more than a little concerned to read official figures from the Office of National Statistics that states that most recently there may be up to 1,500 pensioners or pensioner households in Crawley who are eligible to claim pension credits who have not yet done so. Now, given the decision has been taken on the winter fuel allowance to give it to only the poorest pensioners who can claim pension credits, I feel we need to do something practical to do what we can to encourage that take-up of those credits for local residents who are eligible. Now, they might not get very much, they might get a few pennies, but if that means a month, a week, but if that means they get the overall benefit, then it's definitely something very worth doing. Voting to support this motion will give a strong message to our officers that this is the will of the council to make every effort to increase take-up through the means that are at our disposal. No one should be resistant to claiming the pension credit, Madam Mayor, if they're eligible for it. It's their entitlement, and many will have worked for years contributing towards it. Friends and family should persuade anyone they know who, even if they think they won't get it, to still at least apply. Now, if this motion is agreed tonight, we'll continue those efforts, and officers have already done some impressive work to actually do that, but we'd like to spread the net wider. We want to send out a message by a variety of measures, and through the media if they'll share our message. Our comms team have shared DWP posts. We'll cascade DWP materials as well as creating our own messages, and we'll liaise with local partnership networks and community organisations. We'll share videos online and websites showing people how to apply. The communications team will also create an advertisement for the digital screen in Queen Square to further spread awareness. I believe it's particularly important to offer pensioners a chance to apply online together with someone on a council laptop. Often there could be digital exclusion issues with some of our senior citizens, so I think a standing invitation to pensioners to come into the town hall and go through the process face to face with a human being could be the thing that helps make it happen for quite a few pensioners who otherwise might be switched off the process. So we will therefore be having drop-in events planned every Tuesday and Wednesday in October and November with the contact centre in the town hall reception to test eligibility for pension credit. We'll also offer the option of an appointment with Access Crawley staff if another time is better for the customer. This is on top of all the other great work that's been done elsewhere in the borough, working in partnership with other groups. There's a winter warmer event tomorrow at K2, I believe. It's a free event, and there's a lot else going on, but they'll be helping with that. There's an event at Crawley Library on the 23rd of October, which is part of Positive Ageing Month, and that'll be open to all and be a good information point for those who want to do this. I'm also conscious that we may well have some older local BME pensioners who may need signposting or particularly translation into appropriate languages popular in the borough if English isn't their first language, and we're checking whether the DWP have translated versions available of their materials, which will then share in the local community networks and residents can share in their local WhatsApp groups. Space is also going to be allocated in the winter issue of Crawley Live that's distributed from mid-November, and we'll use a press release to go along with that. The Household Support Fund, as has been mentioned, was renewed by the government. We will try to increase the speed of this allocation from West Sussex for the benefit of the vulnerable residents, and the period starts on October the 24th. In addition, we will explore if we can target people directly using what information we currently have. We're currently undertaking some data analysis and work to establish if we can actively target those who may be eligible. What we have already done, though, is Crawley Homes have written to 1,800 of our tenants who are of pensionable age, encouraging them to apply. And this was done, thank you, this was done through the post to ensure everyone could be included. Already, since that letter, our financial inclusion officers have helped 41 tenants carry out an eligibility check, of which 11 were eligible to apply for pension credit, according to DWP. And others have let us know they've applied directly themselves. So the DWP have estimated that 1 in 4 pensioners are entitled to pension credit but do not claim. So far, our work would bear that ratio out. I am looking, Madam Mayor, right. I'll finish on that point, but what I'll say is anyone who misses out on pension credit are getting advice on applying for attendance allowance and asking whether their property is in good order, and if it's not, referred to the council's energy efficiency officer. So there's lots of things that the council can do to signpost. Thank you, Madam Mayor, and I'll be happy to respond to any other points.
Thank you. Councillor Chris Mullins, please second the motion and please confirm if you're wishing to speak now or reserve your rights to speak later during the debate.
I do second the motion and I will speak a little later.
Thank you.
Don't forget me.
No, I won't. Right. We have an amendment on the notice of motion. This is detailed on page 21 of the supplementary agenda. Councillor Ramsey, please introduce your amendment.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It's incumbent on us as elected officials not to knowingly put out false statements, and sadly the opening paragraph here does have such a statement. This black hole figure and narrative, they're put out for purely party political reasons, and this is why I find Councillor Jones' reference to party political knockabout rhetoric a bit ironic, given that this paragraph seems to have snuck in there. But that, and that alone by itself, that would be enough for us to kind of oppose that part of the motion, but I don't want to kind of get party political about this. I want to take the politics out of this motion. And almost as importantly, the opening paragraph actually undercuts the rest of the motion, because the opening paragraph frames it as, there's not much money, we need to tighten the purse strings. But then the rest of the motion says, we need to kind of get this money to the people who need it. So it's kind of contradicting itself, you see what I mean? Because if this campaign is successful, as I hope it is, then there is a chance that actually the increased take-up of pension credit will eliminate any savings the government makes from withdrawing the winter fuel allowance payments. So in my view, this opening paragraph makes the whole motion incoherent, and it just creates confusion in what's otherwise a really important campaign. So in my view, we should take out the paragraph, we should take out the party politics, and that will allow us to unite as a council and as as a community, and make sure that all the awareness that is generated from this motion is actually focused on the pensioners who need it most, and not just on our kind of party political argument, which I'm sure we'll have both in here and in leaflets on the streets and so on. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Imitiaz Khan, I believe you are seconding the amendment, and in doing so, please confirm if you're wishing to speak now or reserve your rights to speak later during the debate.
Yeah, I'm seconding the motion and I'd like to speak now. We're all aware that the Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, has blamed the Conservative government for leaving a 22 billion black hole in public finances. We're also aware that ministers of this Labour government have repeatedly used this figure to justify the decision to cut the winter fuel payments for vulnerable pensioners. We now find that this figure is being mentioned in this motion, completely unnecessarily in my opinion, at this full council. I was not going to respond to this initially, however, since the other side has, I will. This Labour government could manage its fiscal responsibilities in better ways without the need to cut the winter fuel payment for vulnerable pensioners. In response to Councillor Jones and Councillor Nunnan in giving constructive response as to how the Labour government could manage their fiscal responsibilities without adversely affecting vulnerable pensioners, please note the Labour government has decided to send 11 billion abroad for net zero initiatives. The Labour government has, let's not forget that the Labour government wanted the COVID lockdowns to be endlessly prolonged at their behest, which would have cost the UK an absolute fortune. Labour are placating the union paymasters and promising huge pay rises to public sector workers and train drivers who are already earning far above the average British person. However, all this aside, I do believe that we can work together here in this council and we can work harmoniously. I am therefore seconding this amendment.
The motion in hand.
It's to do with the motion in hand.
The motion in hand is all about us as a Labour group, us as a council, positively helping the pensioners to take up.
He's not let me respond. He's cut me off. That's not. I'm talking about the amendment because they've mentioned there's 22 billion black hole in it, and if you paid attention to that, that's what I'm responding to. So we want you to remove that remark from this amendment so we can agree to it. And if the Labour government manages fiscal responsibility properly, we wouldn't be having this discussion now. Namely, that we do agree with the need to promote the pensioner tax credits further, and we do agree to support this amendment, but we'd like you to strike that part out. Thank you.
Thank you. I will now open up the debate to the floor. Councillor Pritchard.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We've had a bit of a discussion here that's been fairly negative, fairly party political. The motion here seeks to set out support for vulnerable people in Crawley. And one thing I wanted to highlight is our officers are fantastic at doing that. Our officers during lockdown, while they were going around delivering packages to vulnerable people, were also thinking of things like birthdays, where in lockdown people weren't able to celebrate them. So they were sort of sorting out a cake and things like that. They're going above and beyond. Our officers go above and beyond, day in, day out. We spoke earlier about the local plan and how our officers really performed well there. They're already doing these measures. To a certain extent, this motion isn't really necessary because they've picked it up as they always do and run with it. But we need to support vulnerable people in our community. All of us need to, and that's both parties need to work to support them, and that's what our motion seeks to do.
Thank you. Councillor Crow.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Firstly, I think I better declare an interest, personal non-prejudicial, on this motion as the County Council's cabinet member that actually administers the Household Support Fund for West Sussex. So if that can be recorded, I'd appreciate that. I support the outcomes of what this motion is seeking to approve, but clearly I would support the amend. I don't like inaccurate information being presented as facts. So clearly I support the amended version. Thank Councillor Ramsey and Councillor Khan for bringing that forward. But let's be honest here. The reason why this motion has been tabled is that the Labour group are embarrassed at what their own government is doing with the winter fuel allowance. The reality is that encouraging pensioners to take up pension credit is actually business as usual for local authorities. They do that anyway. We do it here, we do it at West Sussex. It is the right thing to do. And indeed, Councillor Jones did highlight some of the existing work that goes on, and that's absolutely right to do that. But when I look at what the motion is, A, B, C and D, I'll just put on record again, I support all of those, but we don't need permission from this full council for the council to do this. 2 years ago, the council announced it was introducing its winter warmers. Come on in, where because those horrible Tories were going to be freezing everybody over the winter, we're going to provide somewhere free and free Wi-Fi. I think it was the free Wi-Fi that did get the odd person in, and a warm place for you to go. And we even had a picture of Councillor Noyce and Councillor Mullins sat on a table at the back of the room, so you couldn't quite make out it was them, but I recognised them as if they were being presented as members of the public. We didn't need full council permission to do that, even though it did cost £350 per person per visit over the course of the winter. The administration just went on and did it. And there's nothing stopping you doing this now. In fact, Councillor Jones has said it, in fact, that it's already going to happen. It's already happening. Great. Well done. Let's get on with it. You do not need a motion for council to do that. And I'll repeat again the reason why I struck the pension credit references from my own motion previously was to not have to cross over with this motion. That's the only reason. You'll see at other local authorities Conservative motions similar to the one that we just had previously that have that reference to pension credit and encouraging the take-up in there. And I very much hope that we will see more uptake. On Monday, I was driving along in my car listening to Classic FM, and I was very pleased to hear an advert encouraging people to take up pension credit. And that's probably a good radio station for it to be. Probably better than Kiss FM. It's probably better targeted at the audience that we want to pick it up and hopefully apply for pension credit. So there is a government campaign. We support that. It's the right thing to do. But let's not lose sight of the fact as to why this has become so urgent and apparent. And it's because of the very short-sighted decision of the Labour government to remove the winter fuel allowance for 10.2 million pensioners. And there's an MP, I think Steve Webb, a Liberal Democrat MP, and he's presented some figures that show that if, hopefully, let's hope the campaigns work across the country, that we do get that uptake of pension credit, that actually the money saved for the Treasury, as Councillor Ramsey said, will actually be hardly anything, if anything, if we are successful and getting pensioners signing up for pension credit. So I will be supporting the amended version of this motion. But whatever the vote, we need to know it's happening anyway. The council will get on and do it, and that's absolutely the right thing to do. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Jaggard.
Thank you. Yeah, on Good Morning Britain last week now, Lisa Nandy said that there's been a huge drive across the country to get the poorest pensioners to sign up for pension credit, which will automatically make them eligible for the winter fuel payment. So this motion put forward by the Labour group is just asking the Labour administration at Crawley Borough Council to do something they clearly should have been already doing for the residents of Crawley. In fact, the motion duplicated our request that they did something to help our residents. That's what other authorities are already doing. And I wondered what was stopping Labour from doing it last week, the week before last week. So why is this motion suddenly needed to ask themselves to do something themselves? Well, could it be our motion prompted this action? And that is why Councillor Jones was just able to list all the things the council is doing. So why is there this motion? Councillor Pritchard just said this motion wasn't actually really necessary because the council was doing so much. Fantastic, great. They're already doing it. So why have we got the motion? The motion serves no purpose if the council are already planning to do these things, already planning to promote pension credits, which is great, which is something they should have been doing 2 or 3 weeks ago, not now after our motion, not after we brought it to the full council. They could have been doing it weeks ago. This is just grandstanding for them. Thank you.
Councillor Mullins.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm sitting here listening to all of this, and the word that keeps going through my mind is the pure opportunism and political positioning of the Conservative group on all of this. And for 14 years, we have had to fight to defend our people, ordinary people in this country, when we've seen the housing crisis, the running down of the National Health Service, destruction of the social services into private companies that charge a fortune for elderly people. Well, it's not us, historically, that's been a problem to our older people. It's the Conservative Party in practice. And you're not going to get any better by the time you choose one of your 2 new leaders. For God's sake, you're going to find yourself absorbed into the Reform organisation very shortly. And that's where you're going. I think that for you to be taking the high moral ground on this sort of issue is daft, because you've got no justification for it. We have been consistently defending our older people in this town by making provisions for them and looking after them, making sure that their homes are up to the decent home standards, and that's where we come from. We do have the triple lock, we do have the bus passes, we do have the pre-prescriptions, and we want to support our pensioners to make sure that they're getting the pension credit support. And yes, if more of them get onto this winter fuel allowance benefit, that's even a better thing. But we have had to come into power with a bankrupt country left by the Conservatives after 14 years. And that's just the reality of it. And that means that it's been very, very difficult decisions for Rachel Reeves to make in the circumstances. I think that you are just being opportunist tonight and putting this motion. And I think that what we're doing in our motion is restating our solidarity with the people of Crawley, and particularly our older people. You are just taking advantage of a situation that's there because of financial problems in this country, which your party supported.
Thank you. There are no further speakers. Oh, sorry, Councillor Lancer.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Well, I note Councillor Mullins' comments about showing solidarity with older people and supporting older people, But that didn't translate into a vote the right way on the last notice of motion, isn't it? Yeah. Memories seem to be pretty short in that respect. Our objection to this notice of motion, and it's the opening paragraph fundamentally, because as other members have said, you didn't need this notice of motion to carry on with business as usual. You should be, and we are, as a council, promoting the take-up of benefits anyway, including pension credit. And by the way, it's estimated that if everyone who could take up pension credit did so, then nationally it would be an additional 880,000 extra recipients. So it's a very worthwhile undertaking, without a doubt. I just thought that figure was useful to table. It's a broader strategic context. But, you know, at the end of the day, the principal purpose of this notice of motion is politicking. It's doing something Councillor Jones says that you don't do, which is politicking. The principal purpose of this notice of motion is the first paragraph, to falsely claim a £22 billion budget gap or black hole or whatever you wish to call it, which is substantially, as Councillor Khan observed and Councillor Ramsey observed, is substantially your own creation. And worse than that, with your spending decisions in the pipeline, probably are not many of them in the manifesto, with your spending decisions that are forthcoming in the pipeline, you're actually, I reckon, intending to increase that gap or black hole further. You are masters and mistresses of your own destiny with that majority that you have in, that inflated majority you have in Parliament. And yet you're using it to create an even bigger kind of budget gap, and then you use that budget gap, which is your creation, to penalise the most vulnerable in our society. It's quite indefensible, and you should at least have the good grace to withdraw that opening paragraph, which is substantially a falsehood.
Thank you. There are no further speakers. Councillor Jones, do you wish to use your right to reply, and doing so, please formally move the notice of motion to promotion of pension credits?
I think I do, Madam Mayor. Thank you. Thank you to all councillors for their contributions, positive and otherwise, today for this motion. It's actually been a little more fractious than I was expecting, really. But Councillor Crowe mentioned the winter warmers. It was something we tried. Now we channel our support through organisations like the Free Shop, and there's still support out there. We just apply it in a different way. I would argue that what's happened recently and what it's brought into focus, this is a sign that we need to put our foot on the accelerator when it comes to getting people onto pension credits, the people who need it. If 1 in 4 are still not claiming, then previous business as usual with council advice hasn't reached everyone or hasn't worked in the way that we'd like it to. Now, Councillor Crowe mentioned the household support funds. I would say to him, I'll say it across the table from one council to another, you know, if you're the one running it, please can you get a move on distributing the money now you've got it? Because the whole thing worked quite well previously, and what we'd like to do is get that help out there to the people, and we want to help West Sussex in doing that. So no need to declare it again. You've already done it once. But in terms of Councillor Jaggard, you've been on this council long enough to know the processes here. The suggestion that I knew what you were going to say or you were going to do with this motion is absolute nonsense. I didn't know what the Conservative group have written before the motions were published. Do you think the officers would tell me? They wouldn't. They definitely wouldn't. It's just you know. I mean, I've heard some foolish things said this year. You know, but that's probably there's been quite some competition. But that's really one of the least sensible ones I've heard. Suggestions I've heard in a while. What's really surprised me tonight is there seems to be a level of resentment by the Conservative group to these constructive suggestions. It's all been, oh, well, it's already been done and it's been done elsewhere. And I just found that genuinely surprising. And Madam Mayor, the less I say about the Conservatives' amendment, the better. I'm very sad if Councillor Ramsey and Councillor Khan don't like it, or it's painful for them to hear it. But it doesn't make our statement any less true. And I'm not inclined to take it out. It's ironic that they're objecting, Madam Mayor, to something they literally did in their own motion about 20 minutes ago. I mean, and I suppose they say in politics, behave, brazenly, outrageously, perhaps, but words failed me when I saw on the order paper tonight the amendment come in. I think that they were going to object to the thing they precisely the thing they've done at the beginning of their own motion. So, okay, I think that covers it. Hopefully there'll be wide support for the actual actions that we're proposing to take and having this motion. And I do think it's important, not just for the internal organisation of this council, but for our residents, that they know that we were making this one of our number one priorities. Thank you.
Thank you. I call for a vote on the Conservative proposed amendment to Notice of Motion 2, Promotion of Pension Credit as set out on page 21 of the order paper. Can I have a show of hands in favour? Thank you. And against? Those abstaining? It's 10 for, 21 against, and none abstaining. The proposed amendment falls. Thank you. I call for a vote on substantive notice of motion 2, promotion of pension credit. Okay, that's fine. Can I have a show of hands in favour? Thank you. And against? Thank you. Those abstaining? Thank you. Okay. 21 for, none against, 10 abstaining. The motion is carried. The next item is Councillors' question time. We have 30 minutes for this item. We will start with the written question submitted by Councillor Crowe and as detailed in the supplementary agenda from page 11, which includes the response. Councillor Crowe, do you wish to ask a supplementary question?
Not on this, Madam Mayor. No, it's a very long answer that will take quite a bit of time to digest, so I might come back to it at another time, but not now. But I will be for verbal questions. But shall I come out now and then? Okay, so if I start question time, thank you, Madam Mayor. My question's to Councillor Khan, Yasmin Khan. We've got three, haven't we, here at the council? How well, first of all, obviously you're well aware that we have the public space protection order for car cruising in the town. How well do you think that's going?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Recently, we've issued about 5 warnings. So we have Tilgate is the biggest problem at the moment. So I think we haven't got much problem. But you said a town. The whole, yeah, yes. We are issuing a warning letter. So we're giving warning letters, and after that we are issuing fines. So there have been recently 5 letters that have gone out, and if they reoffend, we will be issuing fines. But we are on the case, and we are quite after them, if that helps.
Thank you for your answer. I welcome that some action has been taken. How much of the actual problem that has addressed, I don't know, and I don't know whether it's the council or the police that are issuing those letters or those fines. It's probably the police. But can I further ask you? Are you aware of, and I appreciate it's some time ago now, but it is after the last full council meeting, that on the evening of Saturday the 20th of July, when I had the misfortune to try and do my shopping at Tesco in Three Bridges and was unable to park because there was literally well over 100, if not more, cars at a car cruising event, and literally, and I mean literally, 200 young people around those cars. A major incident took place. Were you aware of that major car cruising incident within the town? And what? And I did phone the police, and I mentioned our public space protection order to them at the time. But do you know if anything has happened as a result of that major incident?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm going to be honest, I was unwell at that time, so I'm really not aware of that particular incident. I will make a note, and I will find out for yourself if that's okay, because I really don't know about that. But normally I am kept up to date, but I think I wasn't well that time, so I might have not been updated, but I will. 20th of July, you said, yeah? Okay, I will.
Thank you. Councillor Ayling.
Thank you. My question is for Councillor Chris Mullins. As one of the local councillors for Bewbush and Bullfield North, I'm delighted with the investment the council have put into the Mill Pond Venture Playground, but I would like to see the building and the area next to it back in use for the good of the community as it is intended, and it is something that would benefit the families and children of the local area. Can the Cabinet member tell me if there are any plans to bring this back into use in future? Can I also thank him for the new beautiful council playgrounds in Curtis Walk and Birkdale Close and Perkstead Court, which we visited recently and will be a great benefit to local families. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for the question, Marianne. As you know, I'll answer the last bit first, and that we have a play areas refurbishment programme going on, which is working its way around the town. And the idea of all of that is to make sure that our play areas are up to date, safe, and of good use to the children in our communities, and to be enjoyed by them. And when we do these refurbishments, we do get a lot of compliments and thanks from the people there, and so it's a very nice time to open a new one, and I look forward to opening the next ones that are coming along as well. As far as the Mill Pond Adventure Playground is concerned, we've done the full refurbishment in there, and I think it's been a lovely job that's been completed. It has become very, very popular with the residents that travel there and enjoy it. But we did have the building empty in there, and we were looking to see what we could do with it. Can I announce then that at 3 p.m. on the 28th of October, the opening of the cafe called Ellie's Cafe. We're very pleased to have been able to do a very good agreement with the people who are going to run the cafe, and I think it should be very successful there, and we've managed to do a 5-year lease with them, and I'm very pleased that they're about to open that and to offer the extra facilities and services just to people who might want to pop in for a cup of coffee, or for other people who might be in there using the adventure playground. So it's a great facility to have in the heart of Bewbush, and I'm pleased to announce that that's there, and on the 28th of October will be the official opening.
Thank you. I think this is now to Councillor Jones. I was going to ask Councillor Sue Mullins, but she's not here. So during the last motion, Councillor Crowe and indeed you, Councillor Jones, mentioned the winter warmer hubs that were set up at the community centres a couple of years ago and then they stopped. I would like to know, or for you to clarify sort of yes or no, is the council going to set up winter warmer hubs again in our community centres this coming winter to help those who are faced with the heat or eat dilemma? Thank you.
Thank you for your question, Councillor Jaggard. The assessment from previous years was that the support and the provision that we gave through grants and other funding sources to some of the community groups and charities did seem to be addressing what need existed. And you know, for example, I encourage any councillor to go down and meet the free shop and see what they do. I think they've done some absolutely amazing things, and also because they've got that very good support network, it actually reaches people. There's not been any particular consideration about returning to having the warm hubs. If Councillor Jaggard would like to have a conversation with me offline, we could certainly consider any views she might have on the matter. Thank you.
Thank you. We have lots of questions, so before we move on, can I just ask not to ask supplementary questions? Councillor Lunnan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And I think my question is probably for Councillor Nawaz. I'm not quite certain. Recently, we've seen the High Street get closed due to waterworks. I know it's not directly within control of this council, but could you just give an update on whether there's, you know, it's obviously harming local businesses, harming, you know, residents' enjoyment of the area. Certainly mine when I try and cycle through it on my way to work. Is there any update on when we might think the High Street might get back into action, especially with Christmas, a key sort of period coming up?
Thank you, Councillor Lennon, for your question. I'm sorry to hear that. It's obviously affecting businesses and residents in High Street, and obviously your travel to work has been affected as well. I believe this probably the same issue. It happened in January as well, start of this year. The water main burst, and some of the issue with which is out of this council's hand and obviously office's hand. I think West Sussex County Council Highway Services Department and the water company, Southern Water, is dealing with it. So hence you probably noticed that the end of the High Street is now closed. And we all received an email this today as well, where they temporarily closed for 24 hours, that top end of the High Street. So we are working with them, and hopefully this will be completed in the next few days. And as it's completed, we'll work with the Southern Water to get the mess cleared and all that back to original position, where I do know that businesses have started to contact us, even though it's not our responsibility, but they're worried about it needs to be cleared and needs to get in a good state, which it was before. So I will keep an update from officers on this issue and keep you posted with that. Thank you.
Belvin.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My question also is for Councillor Nawaz. I was dismayed to hear that the closure of Marks and Spencer's is now to be the 16th of November. How do you think this will impact our town centre, and what are you planning to do, please?
Thank you. The mic wasn't on, so I was waiting for that to go green. Thank you for your question, Councillor Balbon. As we all, I think, agree on that, this is not a great news for the town centre. And I was saddened and surprised that M&S has brought this date forward, because we initially heard it might be in January, so we have a last Christmas over there. But now looks like, because of extensive issues with the maintenance of the building and some of the staffing issue, that made that decision bringing forward, and it's now closing on 16th of November. It's a sad news for all of us, I believe, but I'm however hurting that M&S continues to see Crawley as a place worth investing. They're looking for different places, and bigger place, which can be. I'm sincerely hope company is able to find a suitable location for a new store in future, we will do all we can to help affected staff through our Employee Crawley team, which provides free employment support and advice. The team has already visited the staff to offer their specialist advice, and I understand many of the staff will be deployed to other stores if they wish to move. I just need to remind, I think in the last council as well, the success of Crawley Town, and I'm checking the number, our vacancy rate in the town centre is 11.3%, which is well below the national average, which is at 14%. And ours has gone down from last March from 12.3% to 12.4% to 11.3%, which does show Crawley is progressing, and Crawley is a place where other businesses want to invest in the area. So working, and also you might have noticed that a lot of regeneration schemes are going in the town centre. With our stakeholders and partners, we're able to secure up to £30 million of investments in the town centre side of things. So we all in all, we continue to do what we can to encourage investment in retail and footfall in the town centre, and are particularly pleased that the planning application for Station Gateway, our most recent regeneration scheme, has been submitted. The new Institute of Technology and Green Construction Skill Hub, which is currently being built at Crawley College, supported by us through 4.5 million from the Crawley Towns Fund programme, will expand college's presence in the town centre and give a further boost to town centre. So I think there are lots of positive. Losing M&S is also not really great news, but hopefully other retailers will be attracted to our town centre soon. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Barrett.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to ask my question to Councillor Jones. I firmly believe that decisions about local services should be taken closer to the people that they affect. We need greater powers, greater funding and greater responsibilities to flow to local government as the democratically elected leaders of place. So it's good that government's made devolution a key strand of one of its 5 missions to kickstart economic growth. I was pleased to see us submit an early expression of interest for a Sussex-wide devolution deal. And Councillor Jones, I'd be grateful if you could update us on how those conversations are progressing ahead of the English devolution bill in the next few weeks.
Thank you, Councillor Barrett, for your question. You've correctly identified that the devolution of powers down to local level is probably one of the most important and exciting things that this new Labour government is talking about doing. Now, Crawley Borough Council has joined with all the other borough and district councils in West Sussex in supporting the expression of interest sent in by Brighton and Hove City Council, which suggests a strategic combined authority that covers the whole of Sussex. When you look at many of the bigger public services that require that strategic outlook, transport, the health service, housing allocations, the police, economic development, all of them are either run by central government or on footprints which are Sussex-wide, much larger than the traditional sort of council sort of boundaries. And a population the size of Sussex also gives the sort of resources to address some of the bigger issues. So I think it makes sense. Now, I have to say something a little negative now. I'm afraid that the engagement from West Sussex County Council only seemed to work if we agreed with their proposals, and we did find the approach from both East and West Sussex quite alienating, really. I'm sorry, but I did at least. I mean, none of it seemed to be about what actually might be best for our residents. So, but instead seemed to be just an attempt to protect the institutions of the county councils themselves. And it also seems to me that single county council devolution arrangements aren't going to be agreed because the government's just cancelled the ones in Suffolk and Norfolk on that very basis that they weren't strategic enough. And they also they also cancelled Suffolk and Norfolk, I should say, before West Sussex sent their expression of interest in saying West Sussex only. So it makes what the Conservative leadership at the County Council have done make even less sense to me. But I'm sure we can all have a debate about the rights and wrongs on it another time. In fact, I look forward to it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Burgess.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Bit of a positive here, because I have a resident who's asked me to thank the council for the parks and open spaces, and so they're kept in good condition. So perhaps we could admit our thanks to the teams that to look after those areas. However, he did go on to say, and this is the negative side now, I'm sure Councillor Mullins might be the gentleman who might answer this. We've mentioned this before about the town centre. Yes, we do try to keep it clean. I'm no crest about that. But this particular resident said, could you put a bit of colour into the town centre? He found it quite grey and a bit drab. Perhaps some few flowers, a bright colour. And that brought me on to thinking about the possibility of a particular square in the town centre, which was due to be renovated, which would really be an asset to the town centre. And I just wondered how this is going. Will that particular store be... It might be Councillor Noah's, actually. I don't know which one, but fight between yourselves. How is that going, the renovation of a particular store in Council? Do I have to name the store? It's... I've forgotten the name of it. The sports store on the corner. Decathlon. Thank you, Councillor. So that was due for renovation. So I think once we get that going, it could improve the look of the Queen Square, and a few more extra flowers, perhaps to give a bit of colour. So that's my question. It's not really the next. It's more, yes, I thought it would be.
Thank you for your question. I think they put you on my side, so I'll try my best to answer that, and there will be something which I need to check as well. I think you might have noticed there is a lot of recent good work has been done by the Creative Crawley, where a lot of murals has been gone into different buildings. Car park is one, right side of the M&S is one. They are looking some other places as well to make a town centre more attractive. And I do think this is in place as well. So I think I'll take your suggestion back to the officers, see what we can do, and talk to Crawley Town Centre bid as well at the same time. Because at the same time, we have different stakeholders and partners we work with, and Town Centre bid one, and also the Creative Crawley as well. Now, coming back to your question about the sports store, the Decathlon building, we call it, I think, there is a planning application is in the system. We all seen that through Economic Regeneration Working Group, that lovely designs has come through. But as you can imagine, there's so many other issues. Ongoing issue of the water neutrality is affecting a lot of our processes and a lot of our planning applications in there. So I will try to find a little bit more detail about it and get back to you on this one. So there is a discussion going on that, how we move forward with that planning application. But that planning application is in the system as we speak. There's no.
No, she said
Oh, no. Thank you. We will pause the councillor question time within 9 minutes and 55 seconds left. As the meeting has not been completed within the 2.5 hours, I will put it to a vote whether the council wishes to continue for a further 30 minutes. Can I have a show of hands of all those in favour of extending? And against? Okay, that's the majority, so it's carried. So, Councillor Burgess, you can carry on.
No.
Oh, sorry. Oh, sorry. Yeah, Councillor Russell.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. I'm sorry, Atif, this one's going to be for you as well. Many of us in the room are aware of the difficulties that residents of Forge Wood are facing on a number of issues relating to rules and regulations over the development, and most of those are not of the making of Crawley Borough Council. That said, whilst I had the floor, I would just like to take the opportunity to thank members opposite who have been willing to work in a non-partisan and a cross-party way to help those residents. So I'd like to put that out there and thank them for that. But we have a situation now, and I've been approached several times over the last few weeks and days even, where we've got residents that have actually been there for 8 years who are unable to put in planning permissions for variances on their own properties and their homes. Now, what I would ask is, and not necessarily for now, but I would ask Councillor Nawaz if you could work with officers to provide a very clear breakdown of what's holding up this situation. Why is it that they still can't make these planning applications? What are the barriers to this, and when are they likely to be removed? I'd be very grateful if you could work with the councillors, and if you could, I would ask if you could produce a document that I and other Forgewood and Pound Hill and Forgewood councillors can work with the residents so we can see where we're going to go. And this could be made available for myself and other councillors and for the residents, so we can see what's in the way and what can be removed. So thank you if that could be done.
Thank you for your question, Councillor Russell. I totally agree with you on the concerns raised by residents while I was on canvassing in the last few years as well. This is one of the issues with many others has been raised with me, and there is a complex process of planning application. And if I may say, in IT way, there's something called a technically completed planning applications. Well, it's not used in this term, but I'm just saying TECO is the word we use in IT side of things. But the process of that planning application hasn't been completed, and there are some conditions attached to this, which mostly related to highway improvement, junction improvement side of things. But I will look into this in more detail and work with the officers to get you the answers, detailed answers, which helps you to go back to your residents and with the fellow councillors as well. So I'll take that away and work with the response for you guys on that. Yeah? Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Patel.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My question is for Councillor Jones. Can we please have an update on the empty Chinese takeaway at Southgate Parade, which has been in a very poor state of repair and a source of many local resident complaints, particularly over the last year. Whilst being empty, there's been several incidents of fly tipping at the rear of the property, so it's really important to address this empty property. Thank you.
Thank you for your question, Councillor Patel. Southgate residents near the parade will be very familiar with the issues around this former takeaway, which has been closed since before COVID, I think I'm correct in saying, and has become the source of several issues, as you say. I mean, you also correctly identify that one is the issue of fly tipping, which is incredible nuisance there at the moment, which required the council increasing security at the premises. And I absolutely agree. One must hope having the shop occupied again will at least in part help deter it. There's other issues there as well we're going to have to put right. But the shop and maisonette were left in a very poor state of repair. And our assets team have ensured that there's been a deep clean and ensured all the issues that residents raised about the shop itself were dealt with. So I think the assets team really do deserve our deep thanks. They had to contend with many legal delays, which I know they found as frustrating as I did. But that's the court system these days. In essence, we're now marketing the property, and I understand we've had good interest. So this is no surprise. All of our parade units attract interest when they're vacant. And apparently, I understand we've requested best bids by this Friday. So hopefully there'll be a satisfactory offer that can be pursued, and the good news might be for the residents that there isn't an empty unit on Southgate Parade anymore, which I think it would be very welcome indeed, and help lift the parade as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hilton.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. A question for Councillor Noyce. As councillors, Councillor Russell and I have had a number of complaints about the pollution going into the Gatwick stream, which runs through from Maidenbough, which is Pound Hill North and Forge Wood. It's a concern for the ecosystem, impact on wildlife, and the potential for contamination for both people and pets, particularly. We're working hard to identify the source. What can Crawley Borough Council help with? How can Crawley Borough Council help with those inquiries?
Thank you very much, Councillor Hilton, for your question. In situations like this, where there's been a spillage or a pollution into a stream or river, the Environmental Health Authority are in charge of that. It needs to be reported to them. They've got the enforcement abilities, and they will look into it and undertake whatever needs to be done and report back to the stakeholders. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Kiran Khan.
Okay, yeah, there you go. Sorry. Yes, so I believe my question is for Councillor Noyce, but I'm sure I'll be corrected if I'm wrong. So the car park at Bullfield Barton, the roads near it have been in a bad state, and this has been another thing that residents have raised with me. So I just wanted to ask if there is anything being done about this, and can I have an update on this, please?
Thank you very much for your question, Councillor Khan. The problem there with potholes and other issues have been going on for quite a long time, and we had several occasions where it was repaired, but the repairs didn't last for very long. So on the 3rd of September, the car park was closed down overnight, and it was resurfaced on the entrance and the exit to the car park, which is where the main problems were, and also an area to the left of the entrance inside of the car park. And that was all very successful. And over a month on now, I went there recently and noticed that everything was still in order and there weren't any problems. So hopefully that will be the case going forward. Thank you.
Councillor Ashraf, is this a quick question?
Hopefully, yeah. My question to Councillor Rana. In February 2020, a contract was signed by the Council with City Fibre for the provision of 90 public service network connections. I understand the funding for this contract came from a rates pool allocated to digital connectivity. That was across West Sussex. I see last month the contract was cancelled. Can I ask what happened, why the contract was cancelled, and if there are any financial implications for the council? And if there are none, what will be done with this funding instead now? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ashraf. I mean, I've got a lengthy reply. I don't know if you've got time for it or not.
Make a start.
Okay, all I can say is, as you know, we had a contact with City Fibre in February 2020. I'll be as quick as I can. And then when we started this work, the public service network was considered a safe and secure option for connectivity and promoted by the government. But since then, their new technologies are going ahead, and the government is now advising against procuring PSNS. So as the connections had not been delivered, we are now advised against procuring them. We had to cancel the contract with City Fibre, and we have done this in common with other West Sussex and District Borough Councils. So the council has not lost any money at all, and that money earmarked within the rates pool is being held for each authority to reassign to other projects delivering digital infrastructure and connectivity. And officers are currently considering this and will bring forward the proposals in due course. Thank you. I think that was as quick as I can.
The question time is closed now. I call upon the Deputy Mayor, Councillor Hart, to move receipt of the reports of the meeting as set out in Agenda Item 7 on page 27 and in the associated supplementary agenda.
I move that the reports of the Overview and Scrutiny Commission, Audit Committee, Cabinet, Planning Committee, Governance Committee, and Licensing Committee be received. Is that agreed?
We have one item reserved for debate as detailed on page 15 of the order paper issued as a supplementary agenda. We will now consider that item, which is from the Cabinet held 4th September 24, minute 7 on page 72-73, 2024-2025 budget monitoring. Quarter 1, Councillor Jones, as the relevant portfolio holder, will have the final speaking rights on this discussion. This item has been reserved by Councillor Lanza. Are you wishing to speak first on this item for debate?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So this report is on the budget monitoring for quarter 1 of 2024-2025, and for clarity, that means the months of April through to June 2024. So I'm referring to the top of page 73, and the second bullet, where there's a reference to a concern raised about the increased business rates liability of £575,000, which was a bit of a surprise to the council. And in part, that's caused by the higher than expected rateable value for the empty floors in the Create building. I was never asking for figures, obviously, in part A, but one question that was put, and it's not really been answered fully, is the kind of relationship between the attracting a tenant and therefore getting perhaps a higher than expected rent, and what effect that has on the rateable value, and to what extent is the increase in rateable value affecting our rental income, even if that rental income has itself exceeded expectations. And my second point on the same page is about an item that isn't there but should be there. So this is this whole set of bullet points is about what the chair of the Overview and Scrutiny Commission reported to Cabinet, and not everything would be here, but it says the remarks she made would have included these 4 bullets, but there should have been a 5th bullet there really, which is about the housing revenue account outturn for the 4th quarter of 2023-2024, in other words, January to March 2024. If you bear with me, at the top of, if you drill down for more detail, at the top of page 73, if you click the hyperlink comments on the report to the Cabinet, you come to another report, and in here there's a paragraph which says it's disappointing to note that the 2024-2025 payment of the Public Works loan board figure had been omitted from the major repairs reserve in the financial outturn for the quarter 4 2023-2024. What it doesn't say, and again this is surprising, is the magnitude of the error. Now that loan repayment has been made, but it was inaccurately omitted from the presentation to elected members. But it's not a trivial amount. It's £12 million that was omitted, and that's why it should have appeared in the recording, the minutes of Cabinet, and what the chair of the OSC, Overview and Scrutiny Commission, raised at Cabinet, because of its sheer magnitude. To get to that, the report you've just gone to, you need to click on a further hyperlink to report FIN 665, and then to finally get to that £12 million figure that was omitted in error, you have to do a search on the expression PWLB, and I'll be more detailed now, which you can do by Control and F. So you really need to be in the know, very much in the know, to access that error. So this whole system of reporting lacks transparency. There's an error of £12 million, which you need quite expert knowledge to actually access. It's a substantial error. I'm sure it won't happen again, but I'm worried it might happen again if we don't properly record it in our reporting. It looks like we've forgotten it.
Thank you. Are there any other speakers? Okay, Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Lanza, for the points you make. certainly in open business, I'm very loath to go too much into detail on rateable value in terms of how it's affected by getting more in rent. I hope you'll understand that. All I will say is that we took a lot of advice on certain things to do with ratings, but if we're talking about the Crate building, our rating advisors, Style Howard Williams, have submitted an appeal for the Crate building, and we await that. I would say with the HRA major repairs, and also I suppose I should add actually on the business rates of the Crate building, we have also done some things to mitigate mitigate the liability whilst there are empty floors. So I can assure Councillor Lanza our officers have been definitely active on that, and we'll be doing similar in another building in the not too distant future. But in terms of the HRA major repairs balance, what I want to make absolutely clear is that the oversight was in the publication. I have been assured by our head of finance that this has all been correctly accounted. Whether there should have been something. The figure quoted is different in the Outturn report, and that's due to an oversight. That is the case. But this was correctly posted in the nominal ledger, but not sadly reflected in the figure quoted in the report. So, to reiterate, the ledger balance 31st of March 2024 was correct, and the correct figure is shown in the statement of accounts for that year. So it should be noted that monitoring reports are management information, and members were informed of the misquoted figure in the next available monitoring report. So if you'd like to discuss this with me and the head of finance further, I'm happy to do that. But saying that, although what he's pointed out isn't ideal, I don't think that it's fundamentally caused problems for the council, if that's the right way of saying it. But thank you very much.
There is no further supplementary item of business. I declare the meeting of the council now closed.
No, you got well done. You got through. It's quite a lot of tricky things there.
Yeah.
And some big items there.